today we're going to take a look at wide interval triads, and some people call these spread triads, but I prefer the term wide interval triads. And what these are triads that are spread out across more than one octave, and this is in opposition to what we would normally think of as close triads, where you have the 1, 3, 5 of the chords stacked right next to each other. A wide interval triad will take those notes and rearrange them. In this case, if I have a root position major triad, I have 1, 3, 5 stacked from bottom to the top. If I take the 3 and I put it an octave up, now I have a wide interval triad. And the sound of these chords is really beautiful, and I think that it can help inspire a lot of creative ideas for you like it has for me. So we're going to look at this in a couple of different angles and from a couple of different levels of complexity. So we'll start with basic root position, wide interval triads through the 3 different string sets that you can play this formation of them on. And then we'll look at pairing the root position with an inversion like this to give you some more ways to use this. We're going to move all of these things I've mentioned so far along a chord family so that we can implement them in chord progressions. So it'll sound something like this. And you can use these in a lot of different ways to create interesting guitar parts and to have a different sound at your disposal than close triad shapes. So this is kind of a complement to the regular chord shapes that you might know. One nice thing about these wide interval triad shapes that I'm going to show you is that they are using three different strings, but separated with the string in between that we're not using. And so we aren't going to cover this today, but these shapes all lend nicely to moving into 7th chord shapes that use the same basic hand position. So going from these to some 7th chord shapes is really quite a simple step. So we'll conclude the video today with a more challenging exercise that is going to incorporate some scale patterns around these wide interval triad shapes. And the purpose of that is to help you understand better the scale patterns that surround these chord shapes and chord shapes in general, because when we're trying to make chord melodies or chord motion or trying to improvise a solo using single notes, having a good grasp on how the chords and the scales lock together into cohesive patterns is really useful and beneficial for becoming fluid in your playing. So without any further ado, we're going to jump in and take a look at these shapes, starting with the root position wide interval shapes. All of the visuals that'll be on the screen during this lesson will be available at my site, practicemakesbettermusic.com. If you're not already viewing there, you can find a link to that page in the description and find the PDF on the page where you can download it or just view it there. But we're going to start, and we're going to do everything in the key of D today. But as with everything on guitar, transposing to a new key is just a matter of finding where you want to put it, what key you want to put in it, finding the root note, and moving it to that key. So we'll just start here because this sits really nicely on these 3 strings. So to start, I've got the open 4th string, which is my D, my root note. I've got the 2nd fret on the 3rd string, and then the 2nd fret on the 1st string. And these are 3 notes taken out of just a regular D chord. We're just taking the triad, the bare bones of the triad, the 1, the 5, and the 3. And from here, we're going to move up the chord family. So we're going to move from D, D major, to E minor. And this shape is going to be almost the same as here. It's just when I move up, now of course I'm going to have to fret the root note because I don't have an open string there to play E, but I've got my 1 and 5, this kind of little power chord shape, And up here, I've got my second finger playing the 3rd fret, G on the 1st string. So that's my basic minor shape. And if you know your chord family of the major key, it's made up of 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord. So we have our major shape, minor shape, D major, E minor, F sharp minor. Just slid that E minor shape up a whole step. And then here I'm going to go back to my major shape for a G major. And the only difference between the major and minor again is just instead of using my second finger here, I'm going to use my pinky, my 4th finger, to play the major 3rd on top. Then I've got A major, just sliding that shape up a whole step. Then we'll go up to B minor, back to the minor shape. So now we've played our 3 major chords. Our 1, 4, and 5 are the major chords in a major key chord family. The 2, 3, and 6 are the minor chords. And even just what I played there is a pretty sound. These wide interval triads lend themselves to really nice sounding patterns, so that's why I'm showing this. So from here, we're just going to go to the diminished chord, which is the one of kind in the major chord family. And this one, each string set we do this on, it happens the same way. It's the same as a major shape, except the notes, the root note and the 2 upper notes are just 1 fret closer together. So I'm on the 11th fret on the 4th string, and then the 12th fret on the 3rd string and the 1st string. And that makes a diminished triad. If I go up 1 more and back to my major shape, I am at the D where I started before. So if I put these together into the first exercise I'm going to show you, I'm just going to go up and down. So I'll do that one time. 3, 4. Back down. So that would be the first thing I would practice to get used to those shapes. And a note here about how I'm picking it. I'm doing hybrid picking, which is something I use a lot in my playing, where I'm using my pick and fingers to play fingerstyle patterns. And you can do that if you're going to do hybrid picking. The way that I do it is I put my pick on the 4th string, or if I'm on a different string set, whatever's the lowest string I'm playing is where I rest my pick. And then I put each of my 3 fingers on the next 3 strings. And so when I'm plucking the 4th string, the 3rd string, and the 1st string, I'm skipping my ring finger here. I'm playing with my pick, and then my middle finger, and then my pinky. And that's most commonly how I will do it, because that's the most comfortable way to do it for me. But you can also do this all with your pick if you're not fond of hybrid picking. You can just pick every note. You can also strum these chords, but as with any type of chord where there's a string that you don't want to hit, you've got to mute the string that you don't want to hear. So if I strum this chord, I can do that just fine. But what I'm doing is using, in this case, my 1st finger, but in every other case, it'll be my 3rd finger. I'm using those fingers to mute the 2nd string. And I do that by just letting my 3rd finger hang over and touch, just gently touch the 2nd string, so that the sound that I'm getting out of that is just a muted, choked out note that when I strum the whole chord, it really doesn't sound out much. You can still kind of hear the striking of the string a little bit, but it's not pronounced. So if I was to be doing a more aggressive strumming pattern, I could still use these shapes. I'm just making sure that I'm muting that second string the whole time. So the next exercise that we're going to do on each of the string sets is a little alternating pattern where we go from the 1 to the 3. So we're skipping the 2, and then we're going to go back to the 2 and skip the 3 to go to the 4. So we're kind of jumping from 1 to 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6, 5, 7, 6, 1, 7, 2, 1. That's going to be the full pattern. So I'll do it slowly just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6, 5, 7, 6, 1, 7, 2, 1. So a little more quickly, it sounds like this. And just as an example of one chord pattern I could play using a similar idea that I just did, I'll do a chord pattern that goes 1, 3, 2, 4, just like we started our last exercise. And then I'm going to go 3 to 6, 2 to 5. And this is a nice sounding pattern. And I always like the sound of sliding into these wide interval triads from a far distance away. The sound of going from, say, like 3 to 6. I always really like the sound of really sliding into that. Or you can pluck all of them and slide all the notes. That has a cool sound to me as well. Sliding up or down. Even if it's not as far, it can still have a cool sound. And if you're sliding, say, from the 2 to the 5, you have to change your shape change the note you're playing on the first string so it's not sounding out as much. So then when I arrive at that note, I would pluck the top note again. But I still get some of that effect of the slide, which I think is a really cool sound. So when we apply this to the next string set, it's going to be starting at the 5th fret, D, on the 5th string. Now we're going to be on the 5th string, the 4th string, and the 2nd string. And this shape you may recognize as just being 3 notes out of your regular type 2 bar chord based on an open A major chord. But I'm just taking these 3 notes. And again, I'm muting this string in between. In this case, it's the 3rd string now, so that if I wanted to strum this, I could strum all the strings. And in fact, I'm muting the 6th string and the 1st string as well. 6th string, I've got my middle finger just kind of hanging over here. I'll use that to mute the 6th string for the major shapes. I'm also kind of muting it with my 1st finger. I've got the 5th string fretted, but then my finger is hanging over a little bit to barely touch that 6th string. So I could hit that and it won't make a sound. 3rd string won't make a sound. And the 1st string, I've got this part here of my first finger touching that first string. So I don't really need to have my third finger hanging over, though I normally would, because that's a comfortable position to me. But I could strum all 6 strings and get a really chunky rhythm sound. Without making those strings that I don't want to sound make a note. So that's where we'll start. We're going to do the exact same thing. Nice thing about the shapes on these 2 string sets, the one we started with and now this one, strings 5, 4, 2, is that the shapes are exactly identical. So we'll just move up kind of quickly through this one. We've got D major, E minor, and again, like we did up here, when I move from the major to the minor shape, the only difference I need to make is that the note on the highest string needs to go down a half step. And this you'll probably recognize as a piece of the type 2 minor bar chord. So that's my E minor. I've got D major, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor, C sharp diminished, and D major. So again, you could practice it the same way, doing up like I just did, and then back down. And you could do the other pattern, alternating 1 to 3, then 2 to 4, and so on. That gets a little tight way up here, but it's doable if you've got 21 or 22 frets or more, 24 if you've got some kind of shredder guitar. I've got 22 on this telly. So that is our middle string set. And then we're going to move to the final string set for this type of arrangement, and this is the 6th, 5th, and 3rd strings. And our major shape for these 3 strings is going to look like the minor shape did for the other 2 string sets. So I'm on the 10th fret D of the 6th string, I'm on the 12th fret A on the 5th string, and then I'm on the 11th fret, which is F sharp, on the 3rd string. So, and this is like 3 notes straight out of our type 1 bar chord. And again, I'm muting the strings that I don't want to sound out. So that if I wanted to just strum all the strings, I could do that. And for this shape, since we're starting so high up on the neck, I don't want to get all the way up here, and I would run out of space anyway to do all these chords. So I'm going to move back down an octave once we get to the 4 chord, the G. So we'll move through the first 3. E minor is going to be barred. I'm going to use that bar there to hit the 3rd string at the 12th fret. Now this presents a little bit of an issue if you want to strum all 6 strings. If you wanted to, you could, instead of barring, you could use your 2nd finger to play the 3rd up here. That would allow you to mute those other strings. I'm getting a little bit of sound here because I'm getting the harmonic, but Like I do it like this, letting my first finger kind of hang over and touch those two strings. My F sharp minor is going to be the same shape, just moved up a whole step. So I've got D, E minor, F sharp minor. And then when I go to the 4-chord G, I'm going to move down here to the 3rd fret on the 6th string, 5th fret on the 5th string, and then 4th fret on the 3rd string. Then I've got A, just up a whole step from there, same shape. And then here I've got my B minor, which I can do with the bar or with 3 fingers. And then from here, I've got the C sharp diminished chord. And that again, just like before, is like the D major chord if I just move the top 2 notes down a half step and then move the whole shape down a half step. It's like the major chord with our fingers just closer together by 1 fret. And then I'm back to D. So a kind of cool sound that I just did sort of on accident, but it's kind of fun, you might want to play with, is keeping the D in the same position, moving the top 2 down to make it a D diminished triad, and back up to major. I think that's a pretty cool sound. I can play really any progression using any chord in the chord family with this. And it sounds pretty beautiful. So that is the conclusion of the root position shapes that we're going to go over. But these are probably the most useful as far as ease of reaching them. Some of the inversions of these wide interval triads get a little tricky. So we're not going to go through every possibility because there's a few possibilities that are more challenging that we're not going to touch on today. But we are going to go through an exercise that combines the root position with a first inversion on the adjacent string set. So I'm going to go from strings 5, 4, 2 to a first inversion wide interval triad on strings 4, 3, 1. So I'm here at the 5th fret of the 5th string on my D, playing my major shape of the wide interval. And what I'm going to do to go to this next one is to go to the 3rd of the chord, the F sharp, on the 4th string. And now when I go to first inversion, my arrangement is going to be different. I've got 3, and then 1, and 5 on top. My F sharp is on the 4th fret of the 4th string. My root note, D, is on the 7th fret of the 3rd string, and then my second finger is playing the 5th, which is on the 5th fret of the 1st string. So this is a nice chord motion. And if you've never tried chords that are kind of spread out like this before, it may take a little while to get used to it, and that's okay. You could stop here and just get used to this change. And work it just like I'm doing right now, just repeating. This is how I always work new chord shapes, is just repeat them a bunch of times until my fingers start to gain that muscle memory that's so important for chord playing, because we really have to get our hands into all sorts of weird positions that they're not used to being in when we're learning new chords. But then over time, they just become second nature, and all you have to do is think about it, and your hand goes to the shape. So we're going to go through the whole chord family like this. So we'll go from the D to E minor, and now we got to look at the minor shape for the first inversion here, which is more of a stretch. This one is a little tricky because I've got to stretch from the 5th fret, which is the 3rd of E minor. So I've got my E minor root position here. Oops. Then I'm going to the 3rd, which is G on the 4th string, 5th fret. Then I've got to reach my pinky to the 9th fret on the 3rd string. And that alone can be a little bit of a stretch for your hand if you're not real flexible. And then I have to add my 2nd finger onto the 7th fret of the 1st string. But it's a very pretty sound. So if I go from the D to the E minor, that's my minor shape. So my next one, F sharp minor, is going to be the same. And these stretches, of course, get easier to do as you get further up the neck because the frets are smaller, closer together. 4 chord is G, so we're back to our major shape. So I'll go through those 4. My 5 chord is A. Now at the 12th fret on the 5th string. Again, it's the major shape, and now it feels a little more comfortable for my hand because I'm getting further up the neck and it's easier to play those stretches. Next we have B minor. And these 6 are the major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. The first 6, the most used 6 chords in the major chord family. The 7th one is the diminished, and this one is going to be even more of an uncomfortable stretch. So here's our 7th, which is C sharp diminished. Then when we get up to the first inversion, it's just like the minor shape, except our finger on the top string has to be 1 fret further this way towards the nut of the guitar. So now we've got quite an awkward stretch. Got 4 frets in between these 2 fingers and then 3 frets in between these 2. So that can be kind of uncomfortable, but then we're back to where we started. So to go through those all, I could go and that makes up our exercise there. And one of the nice things about these shapes is it leaves a lot of area open for adjusting melody notes on top. There's a lot of notes in here that I can play to create melodies. So that's nice. It leaves a lot of space open in between these wide intervals. And also, these stretches for the first inversion shapes, they can really get your hand ready to play some more challenging 7th chord shapes, like a first inversion major 7, which is a wide stretching chord shape. And there are some like nice chords that are like suspended chords that you can do with very similar shapes. So that's why I like practicing these first inversion wide interval shapes. On top of them just having a really nice sound. So the final thing we're going to do is going to be a little more challenging of an exercise, and if you're still with me at this point, good on you. We're going to add some scale patterns, some descending scale patterns to these basic root position shapes to help you kind of see how you can make some melodies out of these and use these in improvisation too. I will sometimes use these wide interval triads arpeggiated, kind of the way I've been playing them, as a way to travel around during a solo. So if I'm playing around in the key of D, just improvising, might throw these in as a way to kind of travel around different areas. And they provide a nice contrast to single note soloing, and you can also use them over a static chord to create motion. I can play all that over just a D chord. And it creates an interesting effect when you're using a harmony that's not just following the harmony that's there. You're kind of imposing your own harmony over it, and it creates a strong movement. So that's kind of a cool thing I like to do. So the exercise that we're going to do is going to be using these shapes, going from the bottom, playing the arpeggio of the chord, and then descending down the scale, the D scale there, from F sharp down to A. Go from 1, 5, 3 to 1, 7, 6, 5 of the scale. And the third time, do it again, but then we're going to go back up 6, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to move to the next chord in the scale. So I'll do that again slowly. Then here we're going to go to the next chord, which is E minor. Staying within the D major scale for our scale pattern. And one thing to note about this shape is, since it's the second note of the scale, there's going to be this note, which is C sharp, But in relation to E, that's a natural 6, and that's kind of a signature note of the Dorian scale. So this is second mode, which is Dorian. And we're ending on the top note of the next chord, which is an F sharp minor. Now we're on the third chord of the chord scale. So our scale in relation to the F sharp is going to be different. Still just a D major scale, but this is going to be Phrygian in relation to F sharp. So we've got this note, G, F sharp, E, D, C sharp. Moving up to the fourth scale degree. And that note at the end is really the only way that this fourth degree is different in this exercise from the major scale, the first one. Because the fourth mode is Lydian, which has a sharp 4, which in this case, that note is the sharp 4 of G, C sharp. And then we're into the fifth mode, or the 5 chord, A. And the fifth mode is different from the major scale in one note. It has a flattened 7th note, which is the signature sound of a dominant chord, flat 7. And then we're into the 6th mode, which is natural minor with the B minor chord. Now we're into the 7th, which is 7th mode is Locrian, which is like a minor scale with a flattened 2nd and a flat 5th. We're back at the D. So it might get a little confusing talking about each mode and each position. It's correct to say all of those things and describe them the way I did. However, all of them are just a D major scale. So there's no differences other than where you're starting. And it has certain implications for the pattern as you're descending through the scale tones. It's not like each minor chord is exactly the same as we saw in the example I just gave, or each major scale in relation to the pattern we're playing and the chord that we're on. So it takes a little more attention to get these right, but you can use the visuals that I provided to practice this, and I think that this is building on a theme that I've been talking about in some recent lessons and seemingly people had some interest in, and that is just trying to get to a place where you really are able to improvise with chords and creating melody that goes with chords and following melody notes, following chord progressions around with harmony and melody at the same time. This is a very fun and challenging aspect of playing the guitar, and this exercise will help you develop some of those skills. So I'm going to play it through one time a little quicker just to show how it sounds. So, and then we're going to wrap up. So here we go. 3, 4. So that's the full exercise, and I think that's a fun little exercise. You can apply some of these ideas as you're doing a chord progression. If I'm doing... I made a little mistake in there, but that's how it goes. I make mistakes sometimes. I'm not perfect, but these ideas are really useful, and hopefully that can help you understand how you could possibly implement this into a certain chord progression. You can obviously apply this same exercise to the other string sets, but I'm not going to do that here. I think that when you're practicing these ideas that lend themselves towards chord melodies, I think that the first 4 strings are a great place to start and to get familiar with and get comfortable with, because once you really know how to do them on the first 4 strings, you can more easily apply them to the other string sets because the sounds are already in your ears and under your fingers. So it's just about working through the little specific differences that you find on those other string sets. So check out that PDF that I've provided. It's got all of this stuff that we worked on in chord pictures and everything so that you can spend some time with this on your own. Just like any idea that is new to you, it takes a little bit of time to let it sink in, and it may not just be a little bit of time. Some concepts that I've learned take months before they really start coming out in my playing, but if I just dedicate a little bit of time to them, I can see them come out in my playing over time. So the idea is to build up as many things as you can, spend your practice time working on things that are useful and sound good, and then over time they just kind of start making their way into your subconscious and coming out into your playing. So until next time, practice hard and remember to enjoy the journey, and I'll see you in the next lesson.